Good evening. The Board of Trustees of Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District is now convened in a Committee of the Whole meeting on Thursday, October the 4th, 2012, in the boardroom of the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District Instructional Support Center, 10,300 Jones Road, Houston, Texas, at 6 p.m. for the purpose of reviewing that portion of the October 8, 2012 school board agenda designated as action items, and to hear designated reports and recognitions posted in the meeting notice as required by Texas law. No action will be taken at this meeting. I want to welcome the members of our audience and our television viewers to this meeting of the Board of Trustees. As the Cypress-Fairbanks Board of Trustees, we are here to set goals, listen to reports from the superintendent, approve budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. It is not the role of the board to make day-to-day operational decisions. The management and day-to-day operations of the district are the responsibility of the superintendent. We have policies and procedures in place to resolve concerns and issues. This is a public meeting of the Board of Trustees, not a meeting of the public. Prior to this meeting, board members received information related to items on tonight's agenda. Agenda items will not necessarily be handled in the order listed on the notice. The meeting is open to all who wish to attend and hear the matters discussed. During the course of this meeting, the board may determine that a closed session is necessary. In that event, the board will meet in closed session to consider matters duly posted for this meeting as permitted by Section 551.071 to 551.084 inclusive of the Texas Government Code. These proceedings are airing live on CFTV Channel 16 and CFTV online on the district website. They will also be rebroadcast throughout the month on Channel 16 and available as a video on demand on the website. For the tape to adequately reflect the proceedings, I respectfully ask that you please refrain from talking while others are speaking and that cell phones are turned off or in silent mode. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening and for your interest in Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District. Tonight, the students that are helping us run the cameras are from Cypress Ranch. They are Cameron Seal, Jeff Paredes, Javon LaFleur, and their AVP advisor is Dusty Boucher. Thank you for being here tonight. The board will now review and discuss the following action items. Okay. Am I on the right page? Okay.
You gonna surprise us?
I am. I'm a little confused. Okay. Who's surprised at that? The board will consider awarding bids and contracts and are authorizing purchase orders for the following items. No presentation, questions only. Automotive lubricants, renewal year 2 of 3. Demographic services, grease trap and line cleaning, hazardous waste disposal, renewal year 2 of 3. HVAC electric motors, HVAC refrigerants, renewal year 2 of 3. Tree trimming and removal, renewal year 2 of 3. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Morgan on that? No? Can we move that to consent? It's already on it. I'm telling you, it was the dessert. I'm sorry. The board will consider approving on second reading additions, deletions, and revisions to district policies. EFA, local instructional resources, instructional materials. Does anybody have any questions for Mary Jadlowski? No? Moving along. The board will consider approving and submitting to the Commissioner of Education a request for maximum class size waiver. Do we have any questions on this for Deborah Stewart? Okay. The board will consider, I'm sorry. Yes, Ms. Woodall?
And this is Deborah?
Oh, I'm sorry. And just kind of for informational purposes, over the last few years, have these waivers been increasing as we've had tighter and tighter budgets?
I know last year we had 43, and so we have 40 this year.
Okay.
So
And-
it's fewer.
All right, but over the history, we've had to increase our waivers, so.
That's correct.
But just so people understand, this is a reflection of just the way we're planning our classrooms and,
That's correct. We have larger class sizes because of the way we are financing these days.
okay, great.
Ms. Woodall, this is a phenomenon, I guess, that is not unique to Cy-Fair. Statewide, the number of class size waivers have increased dramatically, particularly with the last legislative session cutting $5.3 billion from public ed.
Okay. I think it's just good to kind of review these as they come to the board, so the public understands some of the ways that we're trying to work within parameters and do the best that we can for the students. Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart.
Appreciate it.
Jackson.
Ms. Stewart, would you briefly review the request of waivers? What is the class size limit?
Yes, the class size limit for K through 4 is 22 to 1. And when you look at the chart that you've received, we have the number of students in each class that have over that 22 to 1 ratio. So for instance, Fraser Middle School, we have a third grade class, or in the third grade, we have one student or one class with more than 22 to 1.
Any other further questions?
And is there a requirement at a school level? We have a 22 to 1 class size, and we
Correct.
ask for, is there a second level that applies at a campus or for a grade level?
Well, I'm not quite sure if I understand the question. Some of for classes that are not K through 4, are you asking for those classes that are 5 through 12?
No, K through 4, is there a second requirement such that when you average all the classes in, the average cannot exceed 24 or 25?
And yes, that average is 25 per class.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay. The board will consider canceling the special call board meeting boundary workshop on October the 29th, 2012. Any questions? I have a question. Teresa, can you tell me why we're doing that?
We're asking you to approve the process for identifying the boundaries for the elementary 53, which will be located in the Bridgelands. We provided the information to you last month just to see if you felt comfortable with the process that we would like to recommend this month and ask you to approve. Does that answer your question?
So basically, we will not address this time, but we're going to address it at the November meeting? Is
You're
that-
approving the process
We're
that
approving the
we,
process.
for identifying the boundaries,
Right.
that then we'll put the options, we'll post all the different options
Okay.
for the community to give input, and then we'll bring those back to you next month for
And then
approval.
what do you think the time frame is whenever it'll come back to us and they can see the options and et cetera?
Blanca, when do you plan to have the options posted?
We should have the options posted by the 22nd, the week of the 22nd of October,
Okay,
and that would give them 3 weeks to give us input.
okay, good, that's what I needed. Thank
Okay,
you.
good.
Anybody else?
Thank you, I'm sorry, I didn't have
Dr.
that date.
Ogletree.
Yes, on our consensus agenda was, which we've already moved on, is the demographic services. Will this company that we're engaging Will they play a role in this new boundary
It's a-
for the, what we just canceled the meeting for?
That's a great question. The elementary 53, they will not be involved in the establishment of boundaries for this particular school. However, we will be opening another elementary and middle school for the 14-15 school year. And so it takes them approximately, didn't they share with us, 6 to 9 months to really do an extensive research and review of our district and look at all of the different data to really be effective in giving us any recommendations for attendance boundaries. We felt that the one for elementary 53 was going to be pretty simple. It's not a real involved boundary change. And so clearly Warner is overcrowded, so just the timing of it, Dr. Ogletree, they would not be able to be involved in 53.
And are they to work beyond the two other schools?
Right, and then eventually, I think, what is the year, 15, 16, or 16, 17 for even high school 11? And so over the next few years, we're looking at some, serious boundary changes. And so we felt that by recommending a outside consultant come in and assist us with looking at that and really providing new data to us about where they forecast and seeing potential growth, and if that's in line with where we have land purchases. I know Mr. Sprague is very anxious to have them start to work to see if he needs to do any different land acquisitions in that area.
And I would add to that, and Teresa answered it, but just to clarify a little that, in observing where people are actually building and moving now is a little bit different than the last time it was projected 5 or 6 years ago for high school 11, so that might cause a change in thinking of where that next high school might be, so we definitely want to have them on board for that.
Any other questions?
I do.
Okay. Oh, Mr. Morris?
What are your feelings on Bridgeland? Is that community going to be going to two different schools, or is it all going to go to one?
At the elementary
I'll
level,
let
Mr.
Blanca
Morris?
come up
Community,
because she's
yeah.
been working on some of the different options. That's going to be a decision of the board. Obviously, we'll provide some options to you to consider, but you want to go ahead and speak to that, Blanca?
At the present time, we're looking at an option where Bridgeland, the school in Bridgeland would there would be enough students to populate one school. Right now, there are a little over 700 and I think it's 780 students that live in that area. We've had 110 move in since May of when we ended the school year last year. So we do believe that based on the growth that they're having and will continue to have, they will be able to populate an elementary on their own.
Okay, what's going to be the capacity of that school?
The capacity of that school is, off the top of my head, I think it's 1,080, but it could be 1,090.
Okay.
I didn't bring it with me. But I wanted to share that Cypress Creek Lakes, as you know, is right behind Warner, and it's building all the way to Tuckerton, and then it's going to continue south of Tuckerton also, and then we have Canyon Lakes West that has a big development, and that's where our next elementary 54 will be located. So I see that area really booming quite rapidly, and like I said, we've had over 100 students since May of 2012, so. Unfortunately, Warner is over 1,500 students, and honestly, there's nothing we can do right now but to open that school.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Teresa. The board will consider approving the tax refunds of $500 or greater for Cypress-Fairbanks ISD. Any questions for Stuart on that? Okay, F, the board will consider approving the minutes of the September 10th, 2012 regular meeting. Anybody have any questions for Ms. Blowy on that? Okay, now we move into the non-consensus items. The board will consider the 2012 tax rate resolution to support the 2012-2013 budget, a 2012 maintenance and operation tax rate, and B, 2012 debt service tax rate. We have a presentation tonight from Mr. Stuart Snow and Miss Anita Henry. Right?
Thank you, Mr. President Covey, members of the board, and Dr. Henry. I know that it seems like a long time since we adopted our 2012-2013 operating and debt service budget. In fact, you did vote to adopt that on May the 10th of 2012. During my budget presentation, I mentioned that we could not adopt the tax rates that support these budgets until after we received the certified tax rolls from the Harris County Appraisal District. And we didn't receive those certified values until late in the first week of September of 2012. And so it was too late to place the tax rate adoption on the agenda for the September 10th board meeting. And so that's why we're addressing this issue tonight. Also, during my budget presentation, I mentioned that the operating budget would require a M&O tax rate of $1.04 per $100 of assessed valuation, and that the debt service budget would require, or was expected to require, an interest and seeking fund tax rate of 41 cents for a total tax rate of $1.45. The M&O tax rate remains unchanged from the prior year, but due to bond sales over the past couple of years and the decline in property values that we experienced last year, as well as a reduction in the funding from the state under the existing debt allotment program, the INS tax rate represents a 2-cent increase from the previous year. The impact of that 2-cent increase on a $100,000 home is $13. Now, the average home value in Cyfair is about $152,000, and so the impact on that home is $21. So we are recommending that you adopt the tax rates as described in the resolution that you have before you in order to support the adopted operating and the debt service budgets.
Do we have any questions? Mr. Jackson?
When you said $21 for an average house, is that $21 per month?
That's $21 per year annually.
So that would be roughly $1.60 per month?
Approximately, yes.
Do we have any timing concerns by waiting until October to approve this in terms of when the tax bills are sent out? And would that have an impact on tax collections?
No, sir. In fact, we also approved the tax rate, or you all approved the tax rate for last year in October as well, and I believe the prior year it was adopted in October. The issue is the lateness in which we received the certified values from Harris County Appraisal District. But as soon as the tax rate is adopted, we will print and mail out the tax bills, and it will not affect our tax collections.
You mentioned that you had recommended back in May, and we voted to approve it, a 2-cent increase. Is any portion of that 2-cent increase necessary to pay for the pay raise that was given to teachers? And let me explain. Some of my colleagues at that end of the dais frequently have concerns as to why am I asking questions, and generally I never explain why I'm asking questions. Some would say I'm not real certain that I know anyway. In this case, you know, we all try very hard to be as factual as we can at all times. One of my colleagues did mention that the pay raise that was authorized, there was an inference that we did not have a balanced budget, that we didn't have the money to fund that pay raise, and I would like for you to address that.
Okay, as far as the first question goes, I guess is did the 2-cent increase or expected increase on the proposed tax rate pay for any of the pay raise? And the answer to that is absolutely not. I know that the taxpayers do not see the components of the tax rate when they receive their bill. All they see is the total tax rate. But by law, we're required to adopt by resolution 2 components of the tax rate, of the total tax rate. One is for general operations, which is the maintenance on operations or the M&O budget, and one is for interest and sinking for the debt service, paying the principal and interest on our bonds that we've sold. By law, we are not able to pay for any operating expenses out of the INS tax rate collections. That is strictly for and solely for the payment of our principal and interest on our debt. Cannot be used for any other purpose by law. And so any operations such as salaries, benefits, supplies, materials, anything like that is paid for out of the general operating budget, which is the M&O budget of $1.04, and which is unchanged. With regard to the balanced budget, it is absolutely not accurate that we did not, or you all did not adopt a balanced budget. All of the budgets that I have prepared and you have adopted since I've been at Cy-Fair have been balanced. I've made it a point in my presentations each time when I've presented those budgets to communicate the fact that these are balanced budgets. And when I talk about a balanced budget, that means that the proposed budgeted expenditures equal the proposed budgeted revenues. And so in each case, all of those budgets were balanced. And all of the salary increases, the salary increase that was included in the 12-13 budget, as well as the salary increase that was included in the 2010-11 budget, were within the balanced budget that I just mentioned. Did that answer your question?
Anything else? Anyone else? Mr. Snow, can you help me out here just a little bit? And I know I hear that we are highly indebted as a district, and it's even been inferred that our indebtedness is higher than anyone else's. Can you kind of give us a comparison on surrounding districts in the Harris County and where we land?
I don't have that in front of me, although I may be able to pull it up on my computer, but I did an analysis this year comparing what our principal balance was of debt per average daily attendance for the area school districts as well as Dallas, Northside ISD in San Antonio, and I may have included some other state, other districts that are not in this area. But out of the 10 or 12 districts that I listed there, we had, and I'm going by memory, but about the 7th lowest or the 8th lowest debt per student than any of those districts. And if you give me a few minutes, I might be able to pull that up on my computer and be more accurate with that. But
And those districts that we're surrounded by, are they fast growth districts like we are?
certainly, we are the fastest growing district of all of those districts, other than maybe Katy. And Katy has even a higher debt per student than we do.
Okay.
The highest debt per student that I recall listed there was Tomball, and I don't recall the others. But certainly, we are the fastest growing, and statewide, we're the fastest growing in terms of the total number of students. Maybe not the growth rate, but certainly in the number of students that we grow each year. And so that obviously has a tremendous impact on our debt, because we have to be able to provide the school buildings to be able to accommodate that school enrollment increases.
One other question, Stuart, thank you. You mentioned a decline in our property values, and yet we've got growth in so many areas. What is causing the decline in our property values?
Well, we saw a decline in this area for our total appraised values last year. We're actually seeing about a little over a 2% increase this year and that's what I had budgeted for. We do a pretty good job of projecting even before Harris County Appraisal District comes out with the certified rolls. We do a pretty good job of projecting what our property values are going to be, and I projected a 2% increase, and that's about what it came, 2.11, I think, percent increase this year. But the property value decline last year was just related to the general economy of the area and of the nation as a whole.
Okay.
What we're seeing, though, this year is for 2012, the 2012 certified values is that we're fairly flat in terms of our value change in our residents, but we see a tremendous increase in commercial and industrial in this area. And that's what's kind of pulled us up into a 2% increase.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Jackson?
One technical point, on page 96 of the board book, paragraphs number 4 and 5, this is relatively standard language, and certainly when I was on the MUD board for my district before we paid off our indebtedness, we had this type of language, so I've seen it before. It may be a little confusing for anybody who might read this, because it would appear as if we are actually increasing our M&O rate, but we are not. Would you merely comment on the technical requirements and why this has to be in there?
Certainly, and what you're referring to is the language in the resolution to adopt the tax rates. And I think that, well, the language that you speak of and that's shown there in the board book is required language from the property tax code that was added in the 81st legislature. And I believe that in the legislature's attempt to be more transparent, or at least an attempt for more transparency for school districts in their adoption of their tax rates, the additional language was added so that districts whose M&O tax levy is greater than the previous year as a result of either an increase in property values, an increase in the M&O tax rate, or both, then that additional language is required just to tell the community and the taxpayers that the amount of revenue that we would be raising on our M&O levy is going to be greater than what was last year. And the reason that for us to put that language in there, obviously we're not increasing the M&O tax rate, but as I mentioned, with the increase in the property values on the M&O levy portion, that will raise some additional revenue for operations. However, the language in the tax code that requires the additional resolution language that has caused even more confusion among the taxpayers as well as business officials, school business officials, because it appears by the language that we're required to put in there is even less transparent than I think what the intent of the legislature was. For Cyfair, our M&O taxes will be more than last year, as I mentioned, due to the increase in the 2012 property values. But even though our tax rate didn't change, even in addition to that current language, then the additional language is requiring us, in its special language, that for every year that the district has debt, then we will be probably putting this language in there in our resolution unless legislation changes this. And the requirement is that if the total tax rate is greater than the maintenance and operations effective tax rate, then this special language is going to be required. And so there's a little bit of confusion about what that language is in the tax code and what it represents, what it means, and so there's various attorney opinions about what that means. What it says is the tax rate if the tax rate is greater than if the effective tax rate is greater than the M&O effective rate, then this language is needed. And so the interpretation is that the tax rate means the total tax rate. So if it's the total tax rate is greater than the effective M&O rate, obviously, if you have any debt at all and you have an INS rate, then this language is going to be required. So it's very confusing. In fact, I talked with our tax attorney about this, was complaining about it, obviously, and my intention is that we would work with our legislators to improve the language so that it is less confusing to not only school officials but also to the taxpayer community.
Dr. Ogletree.
Yes, Stuart, in past board meetings, we have voted to sell bonds, and those bonds have brought, the sale has brought tremendous savings to our district. Why would we, if we are saving money on those sales, why would we need to do this 2 cent?
The sales, good question. The refundings that we've done and the savings that we've achieved through those refundings have indeed helped with that tax rate. In fact, the proposed 2 cent increase this year probably should have been recommended 2 years ago and last year because we really did need that. But trying to hold down the INS tax rate and not propose an increase, we just felt that we would just not do that. But the savings achieved through the refundings has helped to mitigate any additional increases. However, we still are selling bonds, new money bonds for construction and renovation projects. And I think that the major impact or negative impact that has helped to drive up that tax rate is the property value increases that we have not experienced in the last 2 years, but also the lack of funding or the reduction in funding by the state under the existing debt allotment. That is a direct tax reduction, if you will, that we had been receiving from the state, and that amount of funding has been reduced significantly over the last few years. So if the funding levels were the same as they had been over the past several years, and if we had not experienced some property value declines over last year and the year before, then I would venture to say that we probably wouldn't be seeing an INS tax increase this year. By the way, I will email to each of you tomorrow that analysis that I mentioned that Mr. Covey had brought to my attention about where we compare with those neighboring school districts on our debt per student. So I'll email that out to you tomorrow.
Thanks, sir. Any other questions? Mr. Morris.
What are the sizes of those districts that you're making the comparison?
Well,
we're up, 110,000?
The districts that I compared were Houston, Dallas, Northwest, North Side. North Side has 90,000 students. Of course, we're the third largest district, and so, we compare in Texas with, Dallas and Houston, as well as those districts that are neighbors to us, because not just the size, not just the number of students have an impact on your level of debt, but it's the rate of growth that those districts are experiencing. And so it's always good to compare ourselves with those districts that are experiencing student enrollment growth, because they are required to sell bonds and to construct schools in order to accommodate that student enrollment growth.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Stuart. The board will consider authorizing the superintendent or designee to negotiate and execute an interlocal agreement and related documents with the Clay Road Municipal Utility District for the donation and installation of playground equipment at M. Robinson Elementary School. Any questions for Mr. Sprague or Claude Yost? Mr. Ryan. Claude? Here he comes.
Well, Will anyone from this MUD, are they here tonight, or will they be here Monday night?
Monday night, excuse me. Be here Monday
Okay.
night.
Because I definitely want to make sure we recognize them. It's
Yes,
quite a
sir.
sizable donation, so it's extremely generous.
It'd probably be good for us to have the approximate amount of what that donation is so we can recognize
It's
it.
like 10,000.
It's 10,000.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from anybody? That's, yeah, do y'all want to move that to consent?
No, let's
No.
leave it. Let's
Keep
leave
it separate?
Yeah.
Okay,
That way we can recognize
Keep
them at
that
that
separate.
time.
thank you, Ms. Hartley. Do y'all want to, I didn't ask about the tax. Do y'all want to move that to consent or keep it separate?
Yeah, I'd like to kind of keep it separate.
Keep it separate? Okay,
We can discuss Stuart's new information.
okay. Thank y'all for keeping me straight there. Okay. The board will consider approving on first reading revisions to district policy DHE local employee standards of conduct, searches and alcohol/drug testing revise. Anyone have any questions for Ms. Stewart? We want to move that to consent? Okay, move that to consent. D, the board will approve the process and the charge for establishing attendance boundaries. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Hull or for Ms. Cooper? We had them all answered. We want to move that to consent? Okay,
I do have one, Bob.
okay.
And since John kind of brought it up before, previously, we've had an additional demographer come in. Are we doing that at all for this one, or no? I know John asked about the specific one that we had talked about earlier, but are we bringing in anyone else to assist?
Dr. Firkwin is going to be our outside consultant to help us through this process.
You really think he's qualified, huh?
Well,
No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing. This is on tape, right? He'll hear that?
he's watching this as we speak.
Excellent, excellent. I'll get a phone call later.
Yes, you will. But we don't anticipate this boundary proposal to have any negative impact on the community out there. They're very enthusiastic about a new campus, and we're not going to be addressing any additional changes that we will need to do once we have a demographer on board.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move that to consent. Everybody's okay with that? Okay. Actually, the last two items, we're going to move to the very end, which they are. Then we'll go on to 6. The board will have a discussion on the following. The board will discuss the superintendent's evaluation for 2011-2012 school year. Board members, there is a packet that Dr. Henry is going to be giving out to us, and it's actually something I think takes more than a review over the weekend. So I would like to move our discussion of his evaluation to November. So if y'all are okay with that, is that all right with everybody? Okay, so that's what we'll do. Yes, John?
Did I understand you, Mr. President, to say we will take up 5F on Monday?
No, we're going to do it now. We just had to go to the number 6. So we will go to 5E now. Is that what you're talking about? Yes. Okay, so next up is 5E. The board will consider a Level 3 transfer appeal of a Level 2 decision made by the Transfer Review Committee. And I believe we have to get set up. Deborah, right?
Yes, we do. It'll take us just a few minutes.
So this is an open session. Is that correct? They
that's-
asked for that?
That's correct.
Okay, it's an open session. So give us about, 5 or 10 minutes?
5 minutes will do.
Okay, 5 minutes. If y'all need a break, please take it.